Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip into something a little more divine, and definitely more bovine. Picture this, a sun god with flowing golden hair, typically seen hurling light and prophecy around like it's glitter at a music festival, suddenly finds himself on earth, dressed like a shepherd, ankle-deep in cow dung. You, too, are there. Somehow. Watching this all unfold like a dream that makes no logical sense, and that's the point. It begins on Olympus, where Apollo, god of the sun, music, and general overachievement, makes the classic mistake of getting into a fight with Zeus. You know how it is, someone throws a thunderbolt, someone else throws shade, and suddenly one of the most powerful immortals in the cosmos is being sentenced to a year of unpaid divine labor. That labor? Herding cows for a mortal prince named Admetus. Not chariots, not lion slaying. Cows. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. It's always fun to see how global and sleepy we all are together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge slowly along a dusty trail winding through the foothills of Thessaly. The summer air is thick with the buzzing of insects, and somewhere nearby, a bored sheep sneezes. You're following a strange figure, tall and golden-skinned, draped in a weathered tunic that's clearly seen better centuries. He doesn't speak much, he just walks ahead of you, flute in hand, occasionally letting out a melodious hum that seems to calm the buzzing cicadas and make the grasses sway in rhythm. This is Apollo, though no one here knows it. To the mortal world, he's just another down-on-his-luck wanderer who's somehow ended up with a job involving cows. According to myth, Zeus was punishing Apollo for killing the Cyclopes, you know, the guys who made Zeus's thunderbolts, so the irony is thick. Destroy divine weapon makers, end up babysitting livestock. Justice, Olympic style. Historians still argue whether Apollo's penance was truly humiliating or actually a form of celestial timeout. Some think Zeus hoped it would humble him, while others believe it was a passive-aggressive vacation plan gone wrong. Apollo's not thrilled, to say the least. Every time he kicks a rock or sighs dramatically, you get the feeling he's mentally composing a passive-aggressive sonnet about Zeus. Still, he's here. You're here. And together, you arrive in the fertile, sleepy kingdom of Fairy. Fairy is the kind of place that smells permanently of thyme, milk, and sun-warmed stone. It's not famous for much, except for one man, Prince Admetus. A young noble with what some scholars have described as the vibes of a golden retriever, Admetus is known for his generosity, charm, and unusually organized stables. At this point in his life, he has no idea that his next hire is literally a god. He's just in the market for someone who won't let the cows wander off cliffs. When you and Apollo arrive at the city gates, the guards glance at your dusty robes and the gods barely suppress disdain for gravity and wave you through. Inside the city, life is slow and warm and sticky with fig juice. Merchants nap in the shade of grapevine-covered trellises, and children chase goats through the alleyways. You're led through to the palace, more of a large, glorified farmhouse than a shining citadel, and there stands Admetus, Prince of Fairy, brushing pollen off his tunic and smiling like someone who always assumes the best of strangers. The moment is soft, oddly domestic. You expect some dramatic flair from Apollo, a glowing aura, a thrum of celestial chords, but no. He just bows his head, murmurs a polite greeting, and humbly asks for work. And Admetus says yes. Here's the thing, hospitality was sacred in ancient Greece. Known as xenia, it wasn't just good manners, it was divine law. Even a prince couldn't just turn someone away, especially if they arrived with a sunburn and a decent singing voice. Some scholars believe this encounter was a moral parable about humility and the value of generosity, others say Apollo simply charmed the pants off him. Admetus invites you both in. A servant hands you cool cloths for your feet. Another pours watered wine. Apollo accepts it with a slight smirk, he's more of an ambrosia guy, but when in Thessaly. That night, as you lay on a woven mat under the flickering shadows of an oil lamp, you hear Apollo quietly tuning his lyre. The music drifts out the window, curling over the dark hills, and even the cows seem to sigh with contentment in their sleep. He might be stuck here, but Apollo is already rewriting the job description. Meanwhile, you're gently slipping into the rhythm of this place. You share a room with some curious cats, a vase that whistles when the wind hits it, and a growing suspicion that this sleepy city is about to experience the weirdest agricultural season of its life. And you'd be right. Morning in Fairy begins with the low, gravelly moan of a waking cow and the unmistakable clatter of a clay jug being knocked off a windowsill by a smug cat. You stretch beneath a linen blanket that smells faintly of hay and thyme, blinking at the dusty light filtering through the shutters. Apollo is already up, of course. You find him standing in the courtyard, bathed in golden sunrise, wearing his tunic with just enough careless elegance to look like a demigod trying not to look like a demigod. Which, to be fair, he is. The cows are waiting. Now, these are no ordinary cows. Admetus, for all his soft-spoken hospitality, runs a livestock operation that would put most royal treasuries to shame. His herds are legendary throughout Thessaly, sleek, glossy creatures bred from sacred lines, rumored to have descended from the very cattle of Helios himself. They moo with authority and produce milk that supposedly tastes like spring mornings and gentle rain. And you're going to be tending to them. With Apollo. The sun god, now turned, assistant cow wrangler. The prince is bustling about already, cheerfully explaining the ins and outs of his operation. There's the Temple Meadow, the Westfold pasture, and the rather unfortunately named Mud Square, where cows that misbehave are sent to reflect on their life choices. Admetus is proud of his herd. His affection for them borders on embarrassing. He knows each one by name, often stops mid-sentence to scratch a particularly fat one behind the ears, and refers to them collectively as, "my lovely ladies." Historians still argue whether Admetus was an early innovator in animal husbandry or just really into cows. One fragmentary inscription hints that his bovine obsession extended to poetry. Another suggests he once commissioned a bronze statue of his favorite ox. You trail behind Apollo as he inspects the fields. Occasionally, he murmurs under his breath, perhaps a hymn, perhaps a passive-aggressive note to Zeus, but his attention is focused. Every blade of grass seems to tilt toward him. Birds linger in midair just a second longer around his head. Even the cows seem deferential. It's not that they recognize him as a god, necessarily. More that they can feel something humming just beneath his skin, like a distant thunderstorm. Or a cosmic tuning fork. Admetus returns with a shepherd's crook, painted, of course, and insists Apollo take it. "You'll need it," he says, beaming. Brumbylla gets moody if you approach from the wrong side. Apollo raises an eyebrow. Brumbylla? She's the big one with the spiral birthmark on her nose. Thinks she runs the place. And so you begin your new life. You spend mornings trudging up sun-dappled slopes, trailing slow-moving clouds of flies and mooing. Apollo walks a few paces ahead, crook slung over one shoulder, his other hand trailing lazily through wildflowers. Occasionally, he hums, deep, melodic tones that ripple through the air and seem to make even the grumpiest cows wag their tails. Lunchtime is spent beneath an olive tree or beside a stone wall, snacking on olives, cheese, and stale bread. Apollo never complains, but you can tell he's still adjusting to mortal food. Once, when Admetus offered him lentil stew, Apollo stared at it like it had personally insulted his lyre. Still, the rhythm is gentle. Peaceful. No wars, no divine chaos, just cowbells and sunburns. And Admetus? He checks in often, sometimes bringing figs or sweet wine, other times simply to ask how things are going. He doesn't treat Apollo like a servant. If anything, he seems vaguely in awe of him, without knowing why. One afternoon, as the sun dips behind the hills and long shadows stretch across the pasture, Admetus joins you by the watering trough. She listens to you, he says, nodding toward Brambilla, who is currently gazing at Apollo like he's made of ambrosia-soaked clover. She respects talent, Apollo replies with mock solemnity. Admetus laughs. If you ever tire of cows, I've got some sheep who need civilizing. They fall into an easy silence, both watching the herd mill about like sleepy nobles in a pasture ballroom. Later, you learn that Admetus wasn't just a prince, he was also one of the few mortals beloved by multiple gods. Some sources describe him as unusually pious, others say he just had killer manners. Either way, it's no surprise that Apollo is starting to warm up to him. Quirky side note? One obscure Thessalian tale claims Admetus once threw an entire festival dedicated to cow birthdays. No one can verify it, but frankly, after spending a few days here, you wouldn't be surprised. Back in the stables that evening, you help brush the cows. The smell of straw, warm milk, and something sweet, maybe nectar, fills the air. Apollo hums again, something old and slow, and even you feel yourself starting to nod off. For a punishment, this life isn't half bad. The next morning begins with the gentle sound of lyre strings being plucked in the courtyard. You sit up on your straw-stuffed mat, rubbing your eyes, and realize that Apollo is already up and dressed, perched on the edge of a low wall like an extremely elegant rooster. You yawn, and he glances over his shoulder. Good, he says, you're awake. The cows are planning a coup. He's joking, probably. But when you step outside, you do notice that Brambilla is eyeing the fence like she's sizing it up for a jailbreak. Admetus arrives not long after, beaming as always, with a tray of honeyed barley cakes. He's in full noble prince mode today, hair tied back, robes fresh and slightly embroidered, but still wearing sandals dusted with pasture mud. I trust you both slept well, he asks, clearly hoping for a gold star review of his hospitality. Apollo nods, deadpan. No complaints, aside from the rooster that sounds like it's been cursed. Admetus laughs. That's actually a goose. She's complicated. With breakfast done and the cows herded to the upper pasture, the day slips into one of those shimmering, slow-moving stretches of ancient time, where not much seems to happen, but the sun moves steadily across the sky and your sandals collect dust at a heroic pace. It's during these quieter hours that Admetus and Apollo begin to talk. At first, it's small things, weather patterns, how to spot a sick cow before it sneezes milk, whether figs taste better dried or fresh. But slowly, a kind of odd friendship begins to grow. You trail behind them on the path, pretending not to listen, but really, how can you not? Admetus is endlessly curious. Where did you learn to play like that? He asks one day, when Apollo pauses by a shady fig tree and starts to strum his lyre. Family, Apollo replies, in a tone that suggests family reunions tend to end in lightning strikes. Historians still debate the nature of Apollo and Admetus's bond. Was it purely platonic? A gentle bromance fueled by shared interests and cow-based mutual respect? Or was it something deeper, more intimate, a divine crush playing out in slow motion across the hills of Thessaly? We may never know. Ancient texts are vague, poetic, and mostly written by men with opinions. What is clear is that Apollo begins spending more time with Admetus and less time silently judging the livestock. He starts helping in ways that don't strictly fall under his punishment duties, tuning lyres, advising on civic affairs, even composing little rhymes for Admetus to recite at banquets. And Admetus, in turn, starts treating Apollo like, not a servant. Not a noble either. Something in between. A trusted companion, maybe. A weirdly well-spoken cousin who always knows when the cows are about to wander into the olive grove. One afternoon, Admetus invites Apollo to dine with the household. It's a rare gesture, servants don't usually eat with the family, but Admetus doesn't seem to notice the social line being crossed. You're there, too, seated quietly at the end of the table, next to a bored-looking cat and a wine jug carved with questionable interpretations of sea monsters. Dinner is roasted pigeon with coriander sauce and soft, spongy loaves of honey bread. Apollo takes a bite, chews thoughtfully, and says, "It's not ambrosia, but it'll do." Admetus grins. "What's ambrosia?" Apollo shrugs. "Nectar's weird cousin. Tastes like starlight and regret." You think he's joking, until he refills his cup with mortal wine and promptly adds a sprig of laurel to it. That evening, after the household has gone quiet and the cows are peacefully chewing cud under the stars, Apollo sits outside with you and strums softly on his lyre. "You know," he says, not looking up, "I expected this to be worse." You raise an eyebrow. He smirks. "I mean, there's still mud. And flies. And that one cow that keeps staring like she knows I killed a cyclops." But, he trails off, plucking a note. There's something about it. Something calming. It's hard to argue. The night is warm and still, and the stars above look like someone spilled a bowl of pearls across dark velvet. You lean back against the stone wall and let the music drift over you. Then, from the barn, a soft, indignant moo. "Brumbylla," you both say at the same time. Later, you'll wonder if this was the turning point, when Apollo stopped seeing this punishment as a sentence and started seeing it as something else. A respite, maybe. A breather from the divine soap opera of Olympus. But for now, he just plays another soft chord, and you close your eyes. You awaken the next day to the earthy scent of hay and something new, the mellow tones of Apollo singing to the cows. You blink, bleary-eyed, and peek outside the stable. There he is, tunic slightly rumpled, golden hair tangled like he's been sleeping under laurel leaves, and seated cross-legged on a flat stone. Around him, a half-circle of cows stands absolutely still. Mesmerized. Entranced. He's not singing lyrics exactly, more like a series of melodic syllables, laced with long, soothing vowels that roll over the field like a warm breeze. You can feel it in your ribcage, humming gently against your bones. You shuffle closer and whisper, "Are you lullabying the cows?" Apollo doesn't pause. Of course. Their digestion improves when they're relaxed. And you know what? It works. Even Brumbylla, usually a stompy diva before breakfast, is chewing with the patient wisdom of a philosopher monk. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd stumbles across the fence and freezes, watching this oddly sacred barnyard concert unfold. As the song draws to a soft close, the cows blink slowly, give a synchronized exhale, and begin to wander toward the pasture with almost ceremonial calm. Admetus arrives shortly after, holding 2 apricots and looking baffled. Did the cows just leave, in formation? Apollo shrugs. It's easier than pushing. This becomes part of the routine. Mornings now begin with music, and you find yourself increasingly invested in which chords make the cows moo contentedly, and which ones seem to trigger spontaneous naps. It's like watching a very fluffy orchestra tune itself. You'd think the novelty would wear off, but it doesn't. The herds become almost meditative. You're walking among them, helping sort them into grazing groups, occasionally redirecting a stubborn one with a gentle nudge and a whispered verse. And yes, Apollo has started naming them in Greek. One particularly ornery cow is now called dyspepsia. Historians still argue whether Apollo invented a form of animal therapy during this year. One fringe theory, written by a modern scholar with too much time and a suspicious fondness for cows, suggests that these music sessions may have laid the groundwork for pastoral healing cults in later Greece. More likely, Apollo was just bored and leaned into the only tool he had, music. You, of course, have been swept along. You're now the assistant cow song coordinator, which mostly involves miming harp-strumming motions and occasionally passing out herbal snacks. Cow granola, you guess. Admetus, for his part, is entirely delighted. He doesn't question it. The milk yield goes up. The cows get shinier. His servants gossip in corners, muttering about the magical herdsman and how the prince's livestock now sparkle faintly at dusk. Because they do. It's not bright. Just a shimmer. Like starlight caught in cowhide. One evening, as the sun bleeds red and orange across the fields, Apollo and Admetus sit side by side near the fence. You're close enough to hear them talking but far enough to pretend not to be eavesdropping. Do you ever get tired of it? Admetus asks. Being out here, day after day, with nothing but grass and beasts? Apollo considers. It's quieter than what I'm used to. But the quiet grows on you. Admetus smiles. I've always liked it. Not many do. It's because you're kind, Apollo says, and his voice is so soft that even the breeze seems to pause. There's a moment, tiny, suspended, impossible, where you wonder if Admetus hears it. If he understands that this isn't just a compliment, it's an offering. A piece of godhood being gently set down in the dust and wildflowers. Admetus doesn't reply. He just leans back on his elbows and watches the stars blink into place. Later, when you're all walking back under a chorus of sleepy cicadas, Admetus pauses at the barn door. You've made them calmer, he tells Apollo. The cows. The people, too. Apollo smiles. It's a temporary spell. Everything is. Quirky side fact, there's a half-preserved vase in a museum in northern Greece that shows what appears to be a bearded man playing a lyre to a group of reclining cattle. The scholars can't agree on the figure's identity, but one nickname has stuck over the years, Apollo, Mutamer. You can't help but wonder if it all started here. That night, as you drift to sleep beside the contented breathing of 30 divine-adjacent cows, you think about how strange it is that a punishment from the king of the gods has turned into a lullaby with hooves. And tomorrow, you'll probably have to comb burrs out of Brumbilla's tail again. But that's fine. That's part of it now. The music, the cows, the slow days that stretch like honey. And in the distance, someone plays one last chord, just for you. By now, your mornings begin with the faint rustle of straw and the low, harmonic hum of Apollo's pre-breakfast cow concert. You've grown used to it, the way the notes roll over the pasture like soft waves, how even the most chaotic calves calm down when he shifts to a minor chord. You've also accepted that your job now involves singing backup to livestock. Today, though, things are different. Apollo doesn't start with his usual melody. Instead, he tries something new, fast, high, a little unpredictable. It's a tune that sounds like a question no one asked. The cows do not approve. Brumbilla blinks, turns around, and walks directly into a watering trough. The others begin mooing with distinct disapproval, like a sleepy audience booing a bad open mic act. Apollo sighs, adjusts the tuning of his lyre, and mutters, "Tough crowd." Admetus, of course, finds this hilarious. He's perched on a fence post with a basket of early apricots and offers Apollo one in sympathy. They're critics, he says. Very traditional. You should try whistling. Apollo rolls his eyes but takes the apricot. If I ever whistle to cows, you'll know I've truly fallen. You're not sure if he means socially or spiritually, but he bites into the apricot like a man trying to forget his Grammy rejection. The rest of the day unfolds with its usual sleepy rhythm. You help brush out the cows' tails. Brumbilla has somehow collected 3 different types of burrs, refill the stone troughs, and make sure the calves aren't wandering toward the olive groves. Apollo walks beside you, occasionally humming, occasionally staring off toward the mountains like he's imagining a choir of clouds. That afternoon, a new sound floats into the pasture, flute music. You both look up. On the hill beyond the east fence, a traveling shepherd plays a lilting tune as he passes by, completely unaware of the divine presence watching him from below. Apollo cocks his head, listening intently. Then he nods. Not bad. You smirk. Should I go tell him he has celestial approval? No, Apollo says, brushing grass from his tunic. Let him have his moment. Historians still debate whether Apollo's time in Thessaly influenced local folk music. Some point to a sudden rise in cow-themed lullabies in regional oral tradition. Others insist it's just coincidence, or a particularly musical breed of cow. That evening, you help Apollo string tiny bells onto the cows' necks. For navigation, he says, with a smirk. And dramatic effect. Admetus joins in, adjusting straps and laughing as Brambilla attempts to eat her own bell. You've turned my herd into an orchestra. Apollo, who has managed to tune the bells into a rough scale, grins. At dawn tomorrow, they'll perform my new composition, Moo in G minor. It's not entirely a joke. The next morning, as the bells jingle softly in the misty pasture light, Apollo plays a slow, wandering melody on his lyre. One by one, the cows begin to follow the rhythm, stepping carefully, their bells chiming in staggered harmony. It's like watching a very sleepy parade led by an ancient demigod who has nothing better to do. You and Admetus stand back, arms folded, watching the whole thing unfold like a dream no one fully understands. She follows him more than she follows me, Admetus mutters, nodding toward Brambilla. You lean closer. Maybe she senses he's divine. Or maybe he just scratches her ears in the right spot. Either way, Apollo is thriving. His cow choreography becomes a regular thing. Tourists from nearby villages begin showing up at the fence line, hoping to catch the sunrise march of the jangly herd. Apollo doesn't acknowledge them, but he definitely adjusts his hair before each performance. Quirky tidbit: there's a surviving Thessalian folk riddle that goes, "What god walks with cows but leaves no footprints?" It's attributed to this very legend, and locals still whisper it during harvest season. One evening, after the cows are settled and the sunset has stained the hills a dull rose gold, Apollo sits near the barn and plucks out a new tune. You sit nearby, watching him silently. Finally, he speaks. You know, I never cared much for mortals. You glance over, unsure where this is going. But Admetus. He's different. He listens. Most don't. They worship, or fear, or ask for things. But he listens. Like the cows. You chuckle. That's quite a compliment. Apollo smiles faintly. It is. Later, as the stars come out and the herd breathes softly around you like a living quilt, you realize how strange this chapter is in the story of a god. A year in the fields. A mortal prince. Music, cows, and a sky that hasn't yet started asking for miracles. It's slow, and sweet, and strange, and you're right in the middle of it. Tonight, sleep comes easily. The hay in the loft smells like summer and clover, the moon hangs round and heavy above the barn, and even the cows seem to snore in rhythm. But come morning, something's off. No music. No humming. Not even a sarcastic comment from Apollo about the rooster-goose hybrid creature that normally wakes the farm. You sit up and peek outside, expecting to find Apollo strumming his lyre to a rapt herd. But instead, you see him leaning against the fence, arms crossed, staring into the fog that clings to the hills like old laundry. Admetus approaches quietly, a wool cloak around his shoulders. He's been like that since dawn, he says. Didn't even complain about the porridge. That's when you know something's wrong. Apollo always complains about the porridge. Eventually, the sun climbs higher, burning through the fog, and the cows begin mooing, quietly at first, then insistently, as if asking why the concert hasn't started. You and Admetus do your best to corral them, but it's not the same. Brambilla steps on your sandal. Twice. By mid-morning, Apollo finally moves. Slowly. Deliberately. He doesn't speak much as you help him prepare the herd, and instead of playing his lyre, he walks silently among the cows, adjusting bells, brushing dust from their backs, staring off toward Mount Othrys. After the noon meal, barley cakes and soft cheese, he finally says, "It's nearly over." You pause, mouth full. The milk? The year. Admetus stiffens beside you. Already? Zeus doesn't keep his clocks imprecise. A long silence stretches between the three of you. The kind that hovers just above your shoulders, heavy as a wool blanket on a hot night. Historians still argue when exactly Apollo's sentence began and ended. Some say it was a full calendar year, others suggest a season cycle, a divine interpretation of 12 months that involved lunar phases, equinoxes, and maybe goat entrails. Either way, it's clear now, the clock is winding down. That evening, as the herd grazes lazily under the fading sky, Admetus walks beside Apollo in the long grass. You've changed things here, he says. Apollo raises an eyebrow. You mean the music? Or the cows? Everything. Apollo says nothing for a moment. Then he laughs quietly. That's the trouble with mortals. You say things like that and mean it. Admetus turns to him, serious now. Will you miss it? Apollo doesn't answer right away. He bends to pick up a small wildflower, a soft purple thing with petals like parchment. He twirls it slowly in his fingers. There are things I never thought I'd care about, he says at last. Like which cow prefers clover. Or how you hum when you think no one's listening. Admetus blinks. You're not as subtle as you think, Apollo adds, and offers the flower with the air of someone pretending it's not a divine gesture. You watch this exchange from a short distance, pretending to be very interested in a goat who's chewing on a fence post. It feels like something private is being said without words. Quirky fact. There's a rare poem, attributed to a wandering Thessalian bard, that claims Apollo once planted a field of purple flowers before leaving Phaerae. The type of flower doesn't exist anymore, but the tale persists, passed down as a bedtime story in the villages around Mount Pelion. Later that night, the three of you sit outside the barn, wrapped in cloaks against the breeze. Apollo plays his lyre softly, fingers dancing over the strings with that strange ease that only gods and seasoned shepherds have. He doesn't speak, but the music says enough. You realize, in that moment, that endings in myth aren't sharp. They don't snap closed like book covers. They drift, slow and syrupy, like this. One long breath before silence. And tomorrow, well. You don't know what tomorrow holds. But the cows will still need feeding. Brambilla will still stomp on something. The wind will still smell like thyme and sun-warmed stone. But something is shifting. You can feel it, humming under the notes of Apollo's song. A soft farewell, woven into each chord. The next day, you wake earlier than usual. The barn is still dark, full of quiet cow breath and the occasional dreamy hoof shuffle. But there's a rustling outside, soft footsteps in the dewy grass. You step out into the crisp dawn just in time to see Apollo, standing alone in the field. Not playing his lyre. Not singing to the cows. Just, watching. The sun hasn't quite risen, and the hills are painted in that fleeting silvery blue that makes everything look like it belongs to another world. Apollo looks like he belongs to neither. You walk up beside him without a word. After a moment, he glances at you. I never told you what I did, he says. You blink. To deserve this, you mean? He nods. You'd always assumed it was something dramatic. Gods don't usually get grounded for minor offenses. And with Apollo, well, his resume includes slaying Python, founding oracles, inventing music, and throwing shade at pretty much everyone on Mount Olympus. He takes a slow breath. I killed someone. Your heart skips, just slightly. A mortal? No, a pause. A cyclops. Ah. Right. One of the Thunderbolt Forgers. You don't strike me as the remorseful type, you say quietly. I'm not. He shrugs. But I am aware of consequences. He goes on to explain, without drama, without embellishment, how he lashed out after the death of his son Asclepius. How Zeus struck Asclepius down with a bolt, and how Apollo, in grief and fury, turned on the Cyclopes who forged the weapon. Historians still debate whether this story is literal, metaphorical, or some blend of myth as memory. Some think it's a reflection of tensions between priestly castes and royal authority. Others say it's just a cautionary tale about divine temper tantrums. But Apollo? He just tells it like it happened. As if recounting a mildly awkward family dinner. You stand in silence for a long moment. Then he says, "So, I was sent here. To herd cows. To cool off." You glance at Brumbylla, who is licking the side of a fence post with quiet determination. You really got the deluxe punishment. A soft smile touches his lips. They thought this would humble me. Did it? He looks at you. It reminded me I'm not as immune to the world as I thought. You're not sure what to say to that. But something about the air has changed. The grass seems taller. The wind speaks a little more slowly. Admetus joins you shortly after, wrapped in a tunic that still smells faintly of the kitchen hearth. "I'm making breakfast," he says, by way of greeting. "Barley cakes again, unless you want to change fate and help me invent cereal." Apollo chuckles. Tempting. That morning, things move slower than usual. The cows wander without urgency. Apollo doesn't sing. He just walks among them, touching each one gently as if memorizing the way they feel. When you return to the barn after grazing, Admetus is waiting with 3 small clay cups of wine. "To surviving another day without anyone getting trampled," he says, handing one to you, then to Apollo. Apollo raises his cup but doesn't drink. "To time," he says. "The kind you don't notice until it's already behind you." That night, something unexpected happens. A local elder arrives at the gates of the palace, asking to speak to the Golden Cow Whisperer. That's what they're calling Apollo now. Apparently, the village's livestock have become jittery, restless. Something about the moon, or wolves, or curses. Depends on who's telling it. The point is, they want help. Admetus turns to Apollo. "You up for a little moonlit diplomacy?" Apollo sighs. "Fine. But I'm bringing Brumbylla." And so you find yourself trotting through the twilight, following Apollo, Admetus, and one very confident cow toward a neighboring village. Along the way, Apollo hums again. Just under his breath. It's low and steady, like a lullaby meant for the earth instead of the sky. You arrive to find the villagers anxiously clustered around a pen of nervous goats. Apollo kneels, examines the straw, murmurs something in a language you don't recognize, then gestures for Brumbylla to enter the pen. The goats go silent. Utterly, eerily silent. Brumbylla stares at them. They stare back. And just like that, the tension evaporates. Quirky detail? Some versions of this tale claim Brumbylla had the ability to exorcise minor spirits just by standing near them and chewing cud with enough dignity. You all return home under a star-filled sky. Apollo doesn't say much, but he scratches Brumbylla behind the ears and murmurs, "Well done, noble beast." Admetus laughs, "We should give her a laurel crown." Apollo pauses. "Already did. She ate it." The barn is warm when you return. The cows are quiet. And the night settles over the fields like a soft, familiar hand. Something is ending. You can feel it. But for now, there's still moonlight. There's still music. And somewhere in the dark, Brumbylla chews with the calm assurance of a cow who has once again saved the day. The next morning arrives like it always does, golden light crawling slowly over the pastures, the distant clatter of someone dropping a feed bucket, and a rooster-goose hybrid letting out a honk so guttural it could summon minor underworld spirits. But today, the usual peace feels different. Like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Apollo stands at the fence again. Not playing. Not humming. Just watching the horizon, hands folded, like he's waiting for a sign you can't quite see. You walk up beside him. Today, you ask. He nods. Zeus doesn't usually send reminders. But, you feel it when it's time. And you do. The air has that odd tension in it, like string drawn taut. The cows sense it too. They don't jostle or moo. They just watch. Quiet and solemn, which is something you never thought you'd say about a herd of animals who once tried to eat a laundry line. Admetus appears shortly after, looking unusually formal. His tunic is clean and pinned with a bronze clasp, and he's holding a small bowl of dried figs like it's some sort of ceremonial offering. "You're really leaving," he says. It isn't a question. Apollo doesn't answer. He just turns, slow and deliberate, and walks toward the barn. Inside, he moves from cow to cow, placing a hand gently on each. Brumbylla gets a forehead kiss, which she accepts with the faint pride of someone who always knew she was favored by a god. Admetus stands near the entrance, arms crossed. He hasn't said anything else, and you suspect he doesn't quite trust his voice. Apollo finally breaks the silence. It was a punishment. But you made it feel less like one. Admetus looks at him, then glances away. I never thought I'd miss having help with cow blisters. A pause. Then Apollo adds, you gave me your home. You didn't have to. Admetus's reply is quiet. I didn't know you were a god when I did. That's what makes it count. Historians still debate what, if anything, Apollo gifted Admetus in return. There are tales of sacred cows that never aged, fields that bore fruit through winter, even an enchanted lyre hidden in the palace walls. But none of the records agree. What is clear, though, is that something passed between them that day, something not quite divine, not quite mortal. Back in the fields, Apollo turns to you. You've been good company, he says, for a mortal with hay in their hair. You laugh. You've got hay in yours, too. He reaches up, finds the offending straw, and flicks it away with a sigh. Well. I'll take that as a sign I've learned humility. Before leaving, he sits beneath the fig tree, the same one where he first played for the cows. You and Admetus sit nearby. It's quiet. Peaceful. No words left to say. Then Apollo stands. The cows, as if on cue, begin to move toward the barn, forming neat little lines, their bells chiming softly like wind chimes in a dream. Brumbylla lingers at the edge, staring at Apollo. He kneels beside her. You're in charge now. She blinks. No pressure. He stands, brushes his hands on his tunic, and says, I'll walk a bit. No flashy exit. I think I've had enough of those. Admetus steps forward. If you ever. Apollo interrupts gently. Don't say goodbye. Just milk the cows on time. And with that, he turns and begins walking across the field. No lightning. No divine chariot. Just dust, and grass, and a god walking like any man might, shoulders loose, eyes forward. You and Admetus stand in silence long after he disappears over the hill. Eventually, Admetus sighs. I think Brumbylla just appointed herself high priestess. You glance toward the cow in question. She's standing in the middle of the pasture, facing the spot where Apollo vanished, chewing very slowly and solemnly. Quirky tidbit? There's a stone tablet found near ancient Ferry that shows a cow standing before a laurel tree, with the inscription, she remembered him. No one knows exactly what it means, but some suspect it's a reference to Brumbylla. That night, the barn feels empty. But not in a sad way. More like the quiet that comes after a really good song ends. You light a small oil lamp, settle into your usual hay-stuffed corner, and listen to the cows breathing. Everything feels soft. Still. And even though you can't hear a lyre, you're sure you can feel one. Just beneath the silence. Morning spills softly into the stable like warm honey, golden and slow. You stir beneath the patchwork quilt of hay, ear attuned to the familiar rhythm of cows shifting in their stalls. But today, the usual chorus of low moos and snuffles is underscored by a curious quiet, an almost reverent hush. You slip outside to find Admetus already tending the herd, his movement steady but tinged with something like nostalgia. He catches your eye and offers a tired smile, the kind that carries 1,000 unspoken stories. Change is settling in, he says, tossing a handful of oats into the trough. Sometimes, I still expect Apollo to burst in with a tune or a wisecrack. You nod, the thought pulling a gentle smile from you. Apollo's music may have been the soundtrack to these days, but it's the silence now that's starting to speak volumes. Today, you help Admetus with the morning milking, fingers deft despite the chill in the air. The cows stand patiently, bellies heavy and warm, their breath misting softly as you work. Brumbylla eyes you knowingly from her spot near the barn door, occasionally flicking her tail with the casual air of a cow who's somehow become the unofficial queen of the pasture. There's a story whispered in the nearby villages about cows who understand the weight of loss better than people do. How they remember kindness, how their eyes hold the quiet wisdom of ages. You find yourself believing it today, watching Brumbylla's steady gaze. Historians still debate the exact origins of Apollo's punishment in Thessaly. Some suggest it's an allegory for the divine learning patience among mortals, while others see it as a myth reflecting political alliances and rural cult worship practices. Either way, the layers of meaning are as rich and textured as the fields you now tend. In the afternoon, you stroll down to the river where the water runs cool and clear over smooth stones. It's the same river Apollo used to visit before dawn, a secret place where he could slip away from mortal worries, or so the stories say. You dip your fingers in, watching the ripples catch the light. The coolness is soothing, a reminder that even gods need moments of peace. A curious little fact pops into your mind, a fragment from an old poet claiming that Apollo once taught the local herdsmen how to read the stars to predict weather. Whether it's true or just poetic license, it fits the quiet, thoughtful god you've come to know. As evening falls, the village gathers for a simple feast. Roasted chestnuts, honey-sweetened bread, and fresh goat cheese fill the tables. Laughter rises softly under the stars, mingling with the gentle tinkling of cowbells. You settle into the familiar hum of voices and warmth, feeling the slow, steady beat of life returning to normal. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a lyre's soft string seems to hum in time with your heartbeat. The days stretch lazily now, like soft wool pulled over your shoulders. The rhythm of the farm has settled into a gentle pulse, feeding, milking, wandering, resting. The cows, once strangers to you, have become familiar companions, each with their own quirks and habits. Brumbylla remains the undisputed matriarch, her steady presence a quiet comfort. One afternoon, as you lean against the fence watching the sun dip low, Admetus begins to recount tales of the local myths, the stories that colored the landscape long before Apollo's time here. He speaks of nymphs who guarded the springs and dryads who whispered through the oaks. You listen, imagining those spirits hidden among the trees and streams, their voices faint but persistent. Apollo had once told you about these beings too, but always with a kind of amused detachment. Now, hearing Admetus' reverent tone, you wonder if the god himself learned something in his year among mortals. Historians still argue whether these nature spirits were once worshipped alongside the Olympians or if they're later inventions to explain the mysteries of the wild. Either way, their stories add a layer of magic to the everyday, a reminder that even the most mundane life can hold wonder. Later, you wander to the old olive grove where Apollo reportedly composed some of his earliest melodies. The trees stand ancient and gnarled, their silvery leaves whispering in the breeze. You close your eyes and imagine the god sitting beneath one, fingers dancing over invisible strings, crafting songs that would echo through centuries. A quirky little detail surfaces. Some villagers claim that if you listen closely at twilight, you can still hear faint lyre music drifting on the wind, a gift from Apollo to those who pause and listen. As night falls, the farm grows quiet except for the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional low moo. You crawl into your hay bed with a sense of peace, the gentle weight of the day settling over you like a familiar blanket. Sleep arrives easily tonight, carried on the soft hum of ancient stories and cowbells. The dawn arrives slow and soft, painting the sky in delicate shades of rose and gold. You rise with the light, stepping outside to breathe in the cool morning air scented faintly with wild thyme and fresh earth. The herd is already moving, a gentle stream of dark shapes across the pasture. Admetus is there, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like one of Apollo's melodies. You smile, feeling a quiet connection to the god who once wandered these fields. The day ahead stretches peacefully before you, a gentle invitation to embrace the simple joys of tending cattle and listening to the land. As you work alongside Admetus, he tells you about the ancient practice of augury, the art of reading signs from nature, especially birds, to predict future events. Apollo himself was said to be a master augur, interpreting the will of the gods through the flight patterns of birds. Historians still debate how much of this was real practice and how much poetic flourish, but the belief in such signs shaped many decisions in ancient Greece, from warfare to farming. Later, while you rest under the shade of a fig tree, you notice Brambilla nearby, calmly chewing her cud with the serene patience of a creature completely at peace. It's easy to imagine the cow as more than just an animal, perhaps a symbol of steadiness and endurance in a world always changing. A charming aside, some villagers believed cows possessed a kind of gentle wisdom, able to sense things invisible to humans. Whether that's true or just comforting myth, you find yourself hoping it is. As the sun sets, painting the sky with lavender and peach, you feel a deep sense of calm. The day has passed quietly, marked only by the soft sounds of hooves and the rustle of leaves. You settle down for the night, the peaceful rhythm of farm life lulling you toward sleep, the echo of ancient myths wrapping softly around your thoughts. The morning light filters gently through the olive branches, dappling the ground with shifting patches of gold and green. You rise with the slow certainty of a season turning, the earth beneath your feet still cool from night's embrace. The cows stir quietly, their soft breaths mingling with the scent of wildflowers and damp soil. Today, your tasks carry a new rhythm, a quiet meditation punctuated by the gentle clinks of buckets and the murmur of animals. You find yourself observing details you might have missed before, the delicate veins in a leaf, the way a cow's ear flicks at a distant bird call, the subtle changes in the sky's color as noon approaches. Admetus joins you, carrying a basket of fresh figs and honeyed bread. As you share the simple meal beneath a sprawling fig tree, he recounts stories of ancient Thessalian festivals, rituals honoring the land and its bounty, where music and dance mingled with offerings to the gods. Apollo's role in these celebrations, though quietly recounted, feels significant. He wasn't just a herdsman but a bridge between mortal and divine, a reminder that the sacred could be found in everyday moments. Historians still question how much of these festivals were purely religious and how much were social gatherings that strengthened community bonds. Either way, they were essential threads in the fabric of ancient life. Later, you wander the fields as the sun lowers, the air warm and fragrant. You think of Apollo's music, the stories you've heard, and the year spent under his watchful eye. The quiet courage of Brambilla, the steady hands of Admetus, and the endless, patient cows have become part of the story too. As night falls softly, you settle into your hay bed, the world outside fading to a gentle murmur. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl, and the faint memory of a lyre's song cradle you toward rest. The morning arrives wrapped in a cool mist, the fields veiled in soft gray light that blurs the edges of the world. You step out quietly, the damp earth cool beneath your sandals, and find the cows already gathered near the barn, their breath rising in gentle clouds. Brambilla stands at the center, calm and regal as ever, surveying her domain with a practiced eye. As you move through the routine of feeding and milking, Admetus shares a curious tale about the ancient Thessalian laws, peculiar regulations about cattle theft and property rights. It turns out that in some villages, stealing a cow was considered such a serious offense that the punishment could be exile or hefty fines, reflecting how precious these animals were to the community's survival. Apollo, as you remember, would have found these laws amusing, perhaps gently shaking his head at human stubbornness and rules. Yet, his year with Admetus might have taught him the value of such order in mortal life. Historians still argue whether these legal codes originated independently in Thessaly or were influenced by neighboring regions, but their complexity reveals much about the social importance of cattle in ancient Greece. Later, as the sun climbs higher, you take a moment to sit by the riverbank, watching the water glide smoothly over pebbles. The gentle splash and ripple are oddly soothing, like nature's own lullaby. You recall a story Apollo once told about a river nymph who blessed the herd, ensuring their health and fertility, though some say it's just a fanciful myth. A light breeze stirs the leaves, carrying with it the faint scent of wild mint and damp moss. The world feels expansive yet intimate, filled with quiet magic. As dusk settles, you return to the farmstead, the cows settling in for the night with soft murmurs. You curl up in your hay bed, the comforting sounds of the farm mingling with the distant song of crickets. The year with Apollo may be drawing to a close, but the peaceful rhythm of these days lingers in your bones, ready to guide you into restful sleep. The dawn light slips gently through the olive trees, casting long shadows that stretch lazily across the fields. You wake to the faint rustling of leaves and the soft bellows of the herd beginning their day. The familiar cadence of farm life feels almost sacred now, like a gentle hymn carried by the breeze. Today, as you and Admetus tend to the cows, he recalls the ancient custom of epimelia, the care and devotion given to livestock not just as property, but as living beings essential to community survival. This wasn't just practical, it carried a spiritual dimension, a recognition that tending animals was a form of respect and reciprocity with the earth. Apollo's year as a herdsman might well have deepened his understanding of this, transforming the god of light and music into a guardian of patience and care. It's a quiet kind of divinity, less about spectacle and more about the steady rhythms that keep the world turning. Historians still debate how much these values influenced Greek attitudes toward animals and nature broadly, but the stories you've lived suggest a profound connection. Later, you wander beneath the stars, the night sky a vast, velvet tapestry dotted with pinpricks of light. The constellations, some said to have been placed there by the gods themselves, twinkle overhead, silent witnesses to the passage of time. A charming little note, local shepherds once claimed that the Milky Way was the path Apollo took when traveling between the mortal and divine realms during his year among humans. Whether myth or metaphor, it feels fitting. You settle once more into your hay bed, the cool night air wrapping around you like a soft shawl. The peaceful sounds of the farm fade into a gentle hush, the pulse of the earth steady and sure. As you close your eyes, the memory of Apollo's gentle music hums softly beneath the silence, carrying you toward the quiet comfort of sleep. The final morning dawns with a soft pink glow, the air fresh and still, as if the world itself is holding its breath. You step outside one last time, the familiar sense of hay and earth grounding you in the moment. The herd is calm, their dark shapes resting peacefully under the rising sun, bells tinkling softly in the gentle breeze. Admetus joins you, his expression quietly reflective. "It's been a year," he says softly. "A year of unexpected lessons." You nod, feeling the weight of that time, the endless hours spent under open skies, the slow learning of patience, and the gentle companionship of cows who, somehow, taught you more than you expected. Apollo's departure is quiet, unceremonious. No thunderclaps, no blazing light, just the soft rustle of his cloak as he turns to walk away, disappearing slowly into the morning haze. Historians still wonder why Apollo accepted this punishment at all, some suggesting it was a test of humility, others viewing it as an ancient symbol of gods engaging with mortal struggles. Whatever the truth, the year's story lingers like a whispered melody. You watch the herd as they begin their day, their steady rhythm a comforting backdrop to the ending of this chapter. Brumbylla, ever the vigilant matriarch, leads them forward with a calm certainty. As you settle back into your hay bed for the last time, the world feels full of quiet grace. The memories of Apollo's gentle music, the soft bells, and the endless fields wrap around you like a lullaby. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, you can almost hear the faint echo of a lyre, carried on the wind, a reminder that even the gods need a moment to slow down, breathe, and simply be. The day's light fades slowly, like a candle's flame gently bowing to the night. Your breath deepens, matching the calm rhythm of the earth beneath you. The soft rustle of leaves and distant murmurs of the herd fade into a soothing hush, wrapping around you like a warm blanket. You feel the gentle weight of quiet moments, the steady presence of friends, the whisper of ancient stories, and the comforting knowledge that even gods must rest. Let your thoughts drift softly, like clouds floating over endless fields, light and unburdened. The world slows, inviting you to settle into stillness. Now, as the stars begin to twinkle overhead, breathe in the calm, breathe out the day's last worries. Imagine the soft chime of cowbells and the faint, fading melody of a lyre guiding you gently toward peaceful dreams. Sleep well, wrapped in the quiet grace of timeless stories.